They say some people are born lucky. I wasn't one of them. My name's Charlotte Navarro. I was 22 the year everything went sideways. I was living in a trailer park on the edge of Tall Pines, Louisiana. The kind of town where folks talk more than they listen, and secrets don't stay buried long. After my mom passed from liver failure, I became the adult in the house. Not that we had much of a house to begin with, just a rusted-out double-wide that shook every time the wind blew hard enough. It was me and my little sister Gracie. She was 13, full of questions and big ideas, and that look in her eyes that told me she still believed things could get better. I didn't have time to believe in better. I had 2 jobs, 3 if you counted cleaning houses under the table on weekends. During the day, I worked as a library assistant at the community college, quiet, mostly filing returns, and telling grown men they couldn't sleep in the reading room. At night, I waitressed at a 24-hour diner off Route 9. Same customers, same bad coffee, same tips in quarters, and apologies. I was also taking night classes slow and steady, trying to finish a nursing certificate. Not because I loved it, but because I figured it was the fastest way to a job that didn't smell like burnt grease or disappointment. Some nights, I'd come home so tired I'd fall asleep with my shoes still on. The bottoms of my feet would be black with fryer grease and exhaustion. But Gracie would be there with her science homework, or half-watched cartoons pretending like everything was fine. We were making it. Barely. But barely was still something. We didn't have luxuries. We had a beat-up fridge with more baking soda boxes than food, a couch with springs that creaked every time you sat down, and hope. Well, hope was rationed like everything else. I gave most of it to Gracie, and kept just enough to get up the next morning. Our mother's medical bills hadn't vanished with her. They piled up in a drawer I kept locked the way some folks lock up liquor or guns. I'd open it once a week, look at the red stamps and overdue notices, and close it again before the panic could take root. I wasn't ready to let Gracie see how close we were to losing everything. I remember thinking if I can just hold it together until next spring. Maybe then we'd catch a break. Maybe I'd get more hours at the library. Maybe Gracie could finally join that after-school music club she always talked about. Maybe. Maybe was a dangerous word. The day everything started unraveling wasn't dramatic. No thunderstorm. No ominous sign from the universe. It was just a sticky Tuesday morning in late August, and the diner's AC had broken again. My shoes were sticking to the linoleum floor, and my back ached from bending over tables for too long. That's when I saw the flyer. It was taped to the staff bulletin board between a lost dog notice and a flyer for a church bake sale. A fertility clinic in Baton Rouge was looking for egg donors. The words were shiny $3,000 per qualified participant. One-time procedure. Strictly confidential. Safe. Clean. Helpful. It might as well have said, "Here's your way out." I wasn't stupid. I knew these places didn't hand out money for free, but I was desperate. And desperation doesn't care what it costs until the check's already cashed. So I tore the flyer down and stuffed it into my apron. I didn't tell anyone. Not Gracie. Not the girls at the diner. Not even myself, not out loud. I just kept working, kept breathing, and told myself it was just a backup plan, just in case things got worse. But deep down, I already knew. Worse was coming. It took me 3 weeks to call the number, not because I changed my mind, but because I kept hoping something else would come through. A better shift, a scholarship, a miracle. But miracles don't show up when you're counting pennies at the gas pump or pretending ramen is dinner for the third night straight. When I finally called the clinic, a cheerful voice answered. She sounded young. Too young to be handling people's futures, I remember thinking. She asked a few questions. Age, health history, family background. I told her I was healthy, didn't smoke, didn't drink no genetic conditions that I knew of. I didn't mention the anxiety that sometimes sat in my chest, like a brick, or the way my hands shook when bills came in the mail. She said I sounded perfect. The appointment was set for the next Monday. Baton Rouge was 2 hours away. I borrowed my coworker's car and lied to Gracie. I said I had a job interview at a hospital. She looked so proud it nearly broke me. The clinic was clean. Too clean. White walls, white furniture, white faces. It smelled like lemon cleaner and fake lavender. Like money. There were other girls in the waiting room, one in scrubs, one with designer sneakers. All of us pretending we were just here for something routine. A nurse called my name. I followed her down a quiet hallway, past doors that looked more like hotel rooms than medical spaces. The doctor, Dr. Randall, was polite, but distant. He explained the procedure again this time, in that professional tone people use when they've said the same speech 100 times. Ovarian stimulation, retrieval, light sedation, minimal risk. Then came the paperwork, waivers, consents, a checklist of things I barely had time to read. I signed where they told me, page after page. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to seem difficult. I needed this to go through. There was a moment right before they wheeled me in when the nurse asked, "Is this your first time?" I nodded. She gave me a look I couldn't read. Maybe sympathy, maybe guilt. Maybe she saw something in me I didn't yet see in myself. They put something in my IV, told me to count backwards. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember waking up with a dull ache in my side and a warm blanket over my lap. "You did great," the nurse whispered like I'd just finished a marathon instead of handing over a piece of myself to strangers. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just stared at the ceiling until she handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $3,000. She told me to rest. Drink fluids avoid lifting anything for a few days. I nodded, thanked her, and walked out like I'd just bought a bus ticket. Nothing more, nothing less. The parking lot smelled like hot pavement and distant rain. I sat in the car for a long time before starting the engine. I wish I could tell you I felt relief, or pride, or even guilt, but all I felt was numb. That night, I paid off the electric bill, bought Gracie a pair of school shoes that actually fit, and put the rest in an envelope under my mattress. I thought it was over. I thought I could go back to my life, my shifts, my textbooks, my sister's laughter in the kitchen as she burned microwave popcorn again. But something had changed. I just didn't know it yet. What I didn't see, what no one told me, was that a label had been swapped inside that clinic. A mistake. Or maybe a decision. All I know is when that syringe went in, it didn't carry what they told me it would. It carried something. Someone. Else. And my body. It didn't question a thing. It simply accepted it. And began. At first, I blamed the diner food. 2 days after the procedure, I started feeling off. Like my body was a second too slow for everything. I chalked it up to stress, or maybe the cheap soda I drank during the night shift. By the end of the week, I could barely finish a sandwich without needing to lie down. My stomach twisted at random smells like bacon grease or wet mop. I stopped eating at work altogether and just sipped Sprite through a straw, like it was medicine. Then the dizziness came. One night, I almost fainted in the walk-in freezer. I told my manager it was just heat exhaustion, even though it was 38 degrees in there. He looked at me like I was lying, but he didn't press. At home, Gracie noticed. She offered me crackers. I told her it was just female stuff. She wrinkled her nose and didn't ask again. That was our unspoken rule. Some topics stayed behind closed doors, but the scariest part wasn't the nausea. It was the silence. My cycle stopped. No spotting, no cramps, just nothing. Still, I didn't panic. Not yet. I convinced myself my body was just recovering from the procedure. Hormones, right temporary imbalance. I even Googled it at 2 a.m. in the dark under the covers, so Gracie wouldn't see the light. Dozens of forums said the same thing: delayed period after egg retrieval is normal. So I waited. 1 week, 2. By the 3rd, I knew something was wrong. And even then, I hesitated. It felt ridiculous. I hadn't had sex. Ever. Not even close. I'd kissed one boy in high school during prom night and panicked halfway through. Since then, nothing. Still, my hands trembled as I bought the test from the gas station down the road. I paid in cash. No eye contact. No small talk. Just in and out. Back home, I locked the bathroom door and stared at the little plastic stick like it might bite me. I'd seen women on TV shake with anticipation while waiting. I didn't shake. I sat still. Quiet. Like I was bracing for a hurricane I could already feel coming. 3 minutes. That's all it took. 2 pink lines. Bold. Unmistakable. I read the instructions again, like maybe I misunderstood. Maybe 2 lines meant not pregnant in some brands. But I knew better. I knew enough science to know what a positive test looked like. And I knew myself. I was a virgin, so how was this possible? My stomach didn't drop. My chest didn't cave in. It was worse than that. I just went blank. I slid to the floor test still in my hand and stared at the cracked tile until my legs went numb. The hum of the refrigerator in the other room was the only sound. For a second, I thought I might be dreaming, or dissociating, or losing my mind entirely. Then Gracie knocked on the door. "You okay in there?" I shoved the test behind the toilet tank. "Yeah?" I croaked. "Just a stomach bug. Be out in a sec." She didn't ask more. Thank God. That night I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, going over everything, every food I ate, every pill I took every time I felt dizzy or nauseous. I replayed the clinic visit over and over like it was a crime scene, and slowly a single terrible thought began to form. What if something went wrong? What if the clinic made a mistake? The next morning I called them, left a voicemail, then another, then 3 more. No one called back. By the end of the week, I drove back to Baton Rouge, walked straight into the lobby, and asked to speak to Dr. Randall. The receptionist smiled too much and said he was unavailable this month due to a family emergency. She wouldn't even let me leave a note. I sat in the parking lot for over an hour, just watching the sliding doors open and close. I didn't know what I was waiting for. Maybe for someone to come out and say, "We're sorry. We'll fix it." But no one did, and the life inside me, it wasn't waiting for answers. It was already growing. A week passed. I stopped leaving messages at the clinic. It was clear they weren't going to call back. I didn't have a lawyer, or the kind of name that made people return voicemails. I was just a broke girl from a trailer park who no one expected to make noise. But I wasn't planning to scream. I planned to look them in the eye. So I went back. Not to complain, not to accuse, just to see. Maybe if I walked those hallways again, I'd remember something I missed. Maybe someone would slip. Maybe a crack would show. The lobby was colder than I remembered. Same fake lavender smell. Same empty smiles. I gave a fake name this time, Vanessa. Told them I was thinking about donating again and had questions about the forms. They let me in. I wandered, slowly, quietly. Near the lab wing I spotted her. A woman in pale blue scrubs, mid-50s. Her ID tag read C. Callahan, RN. She was pushing a cart of sterile supplies, humming low under her breath. She looked tired, but in a kind way, like someone who spent their whole life cleaning up messes she didn't make. I followed her with my eyes, waited until the hallway was empty. Then I stepped forward. "Excuse me," I said softer than I meant to. She turned startled, gave me a once-over. "You lost, sweetheart." I swallowed. "I was here a few weeks ago. For a procedure. Something's wrong." Her face didn't change. That told me everything. "I've tried calling." I continued. "I've left messages. I just need someone to tell me what happened in that room." She blinked. "You need to speak to administration. They won't see me." Silence. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just said, "Please." "I think I'm pregnant." That did it. Her shoulders sagged like someone had dropped a weight back onto them. She looked around, then motioned me into a storage room. Cold metal shelves, disinfectant, boxes labeled with numbers and codes. She didn't sit. Neither did I. "I'm not supposed to talk to patients," she said, voice low. "I'm not a patient anymore." She nodded slowly, like she understood more than she let on. Then after a long pause, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded sticky note. Handed it to me without looking. On it, 3 words Doyle. Archive 19A. She didn't explain. She just said, "I don't know what you were supposed to get." But that name, it wasn't part of your file. I stared at the paper. The name meant nothing to me. Not yet. "Who is he?" I asked. She hesitated. "Retired military. Donated years ago. Private case. Was never meant to be used except under strict conditions." And now I said. Now she finally looked me in the eye. Now someone's going to want this buried deep. I folded the note, slipped it into my coat, and thanked her. Before I left, she said one last thing. "You look like a girl who's been surviving for too long. Whatever you decide, don't let them scare you into thinking it was your fault." No one had said anything kind to me in weeks. I nearly broke right there in the hallway, but I didn't. I walked out of that building holding a single name in my hand. Isaac Doyle. It didn't mean much then, but it would. Soon. The name haunted me for days. Isaac Doyle. It rolled around in my head like a loose bolt. I didn't know what I expected to find. A man with answers. With guilt. With some kind of plan to fix this. All I had was a name and a code. But in a town like mine, sometimes that's enough. I knew a girl at the diner whose cousin worked for the local vet. Turned out she used to date a guy in supply transport at the VA hospital in Alexandria. One awkward favor led to another. And one night, while wiping down the counter, she slid a napkin across the table. Isaac Doyle, retired staff sergeant, lives about an hour out past Clear Rock off Route 27. Folks say he keeps to himself. I stared at the napkin like it was radioactive. I waited 3 more days. Maybe I was scared. Or maybe I was trying to talk myself out of it. What was I going to say anyway? "Hey, I think your DNA accidentally started a life inside me." That's not exactly a porch-friendly conversation. But then Gracie asked if I could buy her new piano sheet music for school, and I realized I didn't have the right to hide from this, not when the consequences were already moving inside me. So I went. It was late October when I drove out to where the pavement turned into gravel. Trees lined both sides of the road, like they were trying to hide the land behind them. I passed a rusty sign that read, "Private property. Keep out." A few minutes later, I found it. A small, weather-worn cabin. Tin roof. Peeling green paint. A truck out front, old but well-maintained. The kind of place built for silence. I parked far enough not to spook anyone. Took a breath. Got out. The air smelled like pine and cold dirt. Birds flinched when I stepped onto the porch. I knocked. Once. Twice. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Then I heard the lock click from inside. A shadow moved behind the curtain. The door opened just enough for me to see a pair of tired, guarded eyes. Yes. His voice was low, controlled, like someone used to giving orders. I swallowed hard. "Are you Isaac Doyle?" A pause, a flicker of something in his jaw. Then, "Who's asking? I'm Charlotte Navarro. I need to talk to you. It's about a clinic in Baton Rouge." His eyes narrowed. "I'm not interested. I think your donor profile was used by mistake." I stepped forward. The door closed 2 inches. His voice sharpened. "You need to leave. Wait, please. I'm not here to cause trouble. Something happened. I'm pregnant. And I've never..." He cut me off. "I don't know you. And whatever game this is, I want no part in it. You understand silence? Just the sound of wind in the trees." His words hit harder than I expected. Not angry. Just final. I nodded. Backed away. "Okay," I whispered. "I'm sorry." He didn't say anything else. Just shut the door. I stood on that porch for another minute. Part of me wanted to scream through the wood, shake the truth out of him. But I didn't. I just turned, walked back to the car, and drove away. I told myself he was scared, shocked, maybe even broken. But the truth, I was the one who felt broken. The drive home felt longer. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But sometimes disappointment isn't loud. Sometimes it's just quiet, heavy, like wet clothes on your back you can't take off. Gravel crunched under my tires as I turned back onto the road. I checked my rearview mirror once, then again. The house didn't move. No one stepped out. No second chance came running after me. I pulled over about 10 minutes later, parked beneath a crooked pine tree, and sat there with the engine off hands, gripping the steering wheel until they turned red. The wind rattled the passenger mirror. I could feel the baby flutter, just barely, like a whisper from the inside, and something in me shifted. He shut the door. Fine. But that didn't mean I was done. I reached for my backpack, rummaging through loose papers, gum wrappers, and lecture notes, until I found the envelope I'd carried for weeks. Inside the clinic records the donor number and the genetic match printout. I had no idea if he would even look at it. Maybe he'd burn it, toss it in the trash, deny everything until the day he died. But he deserved to know. And maybe, just maybe, a part of him wanted to. So I turned the car around. The sun was dipping now, sliding toward the tree line. By the time I reached his place again, the porch light was on, casting a dim orange glow over the steps. No movement. No sign he knew I was there. I didn't knock this time. Instead, I walked up slowly, breathing through the cold, and knelt near the door. I slid the envelope under the mat, making sure it wouldn't blow away. Then I pulled out a pen and a napkin from my coat pocket, the only paper I had left. I wrote just one line. "This isn't a trick." I just thought you deserved the truth, too. Charlotte. I didn't sign my last name. He already knew it. I stood there a second longer, listening. Still nothing. Just the wind through the trees and the sound of my heart beating where everything else felt quiet. Then I walked back down the steps. Back in the car. I didn't look behind me this time. No more waiting to see if he'd come after me. No more hoping for a movie ending. This wasn't a story someone else was writing. It was mine. And I was done knocking on doors that didn't open. That night, after Gracie went to bed, I curled up on the floor beside the heater with a blanket around my shoulders. I didn't turn on the TV. Didn't open my laptop. I just sat there in the dark, letting the silence wrap around me. I thought about the way Isaac looked at me like I was a problem he didn't want to solve. And I wondered what had happened to him to make him that hard that closed off. But I also wondered what might happen if he opened that envelope. I didn't know it yet, but by the end of that week he would, and it would change everything. He showed up 3 days later. I was refilling napkin holders at the diner when I saw the truck. Same one from the cabin. Mud caked on the tires, dent in the passenger door, and a silence in the engine even after it shut off, like the whole thing was holding its breath. He walked in like a man used to scanning rooms, didn't look twice at the menu, the people, or the peeling linoleum. But when his eyes found mine, he stopped. I froze, my fingers still wrapped around a stack of ketchup packets. "Charlotte Navarro," he said. His voice was quieter than last time, still low, still careful, like a man testing the ground before each step. "Yeah," I replied slowly. "Can we talk?" I nodded toward the back booth, the one no one liked because the overhead bulb flickered. He followed without a word. I slid into the vinyl seat across from him, wiped my palms on my apron. He placed the envelope on the table between us. The clinic paperwork. My handwriting still on the napkin. "I read it," he said, "and I still don't know what you want from me." That stung, more than I expected. I leaned back, crossed my arms. "I don't want anything from you. I just needed you to know." He studied me for a second. Not cruelly, just like I was math he didn't know how to solve. "I didn't authorize use of my sample," he said. "It was stored under a restricted file. For emergencies only." Well, I said, I guess someone thought this qualified. His jaw tightened. He looked like a man who'd spent years building walls, with no intention of ever letting anyone in again. "You said you're pregnant," he asked. 18 weeks, I said, give or take. Silence stretched between us. He looked down at the table. I served 3 tours. Came back with pieces missing, left what I had in a freezer, because I didn't think I'd ever trust myself to be someone's father. "You're not," I said flatly. "I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask for any of this." He blinked. For the first time I saw something flicker regret, maybe, or fear. "So why tell me?" "Because I thought you deserved to know that something real came from you, whether you wanted it or not." He looked at me then, not just at me, but into me, like he was searching for a reason not to stand up and walk out again. "I don't know how to be part of this," he said. "I'm not asking you to be." We sat there a moment longer. Neither one of us moved. A waitress passed by and dropped off 2 glasses of water, eyeing him like he didn't belong in a place that sold coffee by the pot and pie by the slice. He didn't touch the glass. Finally, I said, "Look, you can disappear again if you want. That's your call. But you can't unknow this now. You can't pretend none of it matters." He looked away. It wasn't supposed to happen. He said more to himself than to me. Most things worth a damn never are. He glanced back at me. I couldn't tell if he was about to argue or apologize. Instead, he asked, "Does anyone else know I shook my head?" "Only the clinic, and they're burying it." He nodded slowly, then stood. "I don't know what I'm going to do." I nodded back. "Join the club." He hesitated, then placed something on the table before he walked out. A card, plain. His name, a number scrawled in ink. "I don't answer unknown callers," he said. "But if it's you, I'll pick up." And then he was gone. I sat there staring at the card, wondering if he meant it, wondering if I even wanted him to. It took a few days before I called the number on that card. I rehearsed it in my head too many times, what I'd say, what I wouldn't. But in the end I just said, "Hi, it's me." And he picked up. We met again. Not at the diner this time. Somewhere quieter, a park on the edge of town, where the trees still had most of their leaves, and the benches didn't squeak. He brought coffee in 2 paper cups. Didn't ask how I liked it. Just handed me one, and sat beside me on the bench like we'd done it 100 times. I think he expected silence. But that wasn't what he got. I didn't grow up with much, I started. Mom was a waitress. Dad split before I could spell my own name. It was just me and her most of the time. Then Gracie came along. Different father. Same story. Isaac didn't look at me. But he didn't stop me either. Mom got sick 3 years ago, I went on. Liver failure. She tried to keep working through it. God knows she did. But by the end it was me wiping her mouth and reading hospital bills like they were death threats. He still said nothing. "She passed in April," I said, in a room that smelled like bleach and lemon pudding. She held my hand until the monitors went flat. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. That story had been retold in my head so many times. It felt more like a photograph now. "I'm sorry," he finally said. Quiet. Real. I nodded. Me too. He took a sip of coffee, then stared out at the trees like they owed him something. "I served 12 years, he said. Army. Most of it in the sand." I waited. There was a village outside Kandahar, he continued. Small. No more than 20 families. We were doing water runs, clearing old roads. Nothing fancy. Nothing heroic. His hand tightened around the cup. "There was this kid," he said. Maybe 10. Always waved at us when we passed. Big grin, cracked lips, missing teeth. He'd give us flowers, these little yellow weeds, and say, "For luck, soldier." Every time. I didn't breathe. One day we came back, and the village was gone. He said, voice flat. Flattened. Burned. No warning. No reason. He paused. I never found the boy. Just his flowers. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything neither of us could put into words. "I kept a few," he said. "Pressed them in a book. Haven't opened it in years." I looked at him, then really looked. His shoulders weren't just broad. They carried names, ghosts, and things I'd never understand. "I don't want pity," he added. "You won't get it from me," I replied. He smirked. "Just slightly." "Good." We sat there until the wind picked up, shaking loose a few leaves. "I'm not built for this," he said suddenly. "This thing between us. I don't know how to be around people anymore." "Then don't be around people," I said. "Just be around me." He turned toward me, surprised by my steadiness. "I'm not asking you to fix anything," I said. I don't want to carry this alone." He nodded once. No promises. Just a kind of acknowledgement. I stood up to leave cup still warm in my hand. "You didn't have to come that day," I said. "To the diner." "I know," he said. "So why did you—" He looked at me, because for the first time in years, he said I didn't want to disappear. I didn't answer. I just walked away. But my heart, it stayed on that bench a little longer. The first headline didn't even have my name. It just said, "Clinic mistakenly impregnates local woman with soldier's DNA." At first I thought it was fake. Some trash blog, maybe. But the photo wasn't. It was me, blurry mid-step, carrying groceries into my trailer. They'd zoomed in just enough to catch my face, and just far enough to make me look guilty. Like someone caught doing something she couldn't explain. Within a day, it was everywhere. Talk radio, Reddit threads, morning TV with anchors making light of things they didn't understand. Virgin birth in Louisiana. One of them laughed. Is this a lawsuit or a Lifetime movie? They didn't say my name until day 3. But when they did, it stuck. Charlotte Navarro from eggs to embryos. A bioethical nightmare. The girl who got pregnant without having sex. Or a clue. I stopped going to the diner. The manager called once to say I was a distraction. Said customers were uncomfortable. Said he had to think of the business. I didn't blame him. Not really. It was a place for refills and gossip, not lawsuits and scandal. Gracie got pulled from a school concert because parents complained. Said she was a disruption. She didn't cry. Just sat in her room with her headphones on and drew shapes in the fog of the window. Even my landlord started acting different. Knocked twice in 1 week just to check the pipes. His eyes lingered longer. His tone changed. I started keeping a chair under the doorknob at night, just in case. The worst part wasn't the media. It was the way people looked at me like I owed them something. An explanation. A confession. A reason why they were allowed to gawk. I'd go to the pharmacy and feel eyes crawl across my belly like ants. I'd hear whispers in line at the gas station. That's the one. She says she's never had sex. Please. Probably did it for the money. I thought the loneliness before had been bad. But this was different. This was exile in plain sight. Even the clinic stayed quiet. No statements. No phone calls. Just silence. Clean, cold, legal silence. And Isaac, he went silent too. After that day in the park, I didn't hear from him. No calls. No messages. I told myself he was processing. That maybe this kind of exposure was the last thing a man like him wanted. But deep down, I started wondering if maybe he regretted showing up at all. Maybe I was on my own. Again. One night, I walked to the edge of the trailer park, where the woods met the creek. I stood there a long time, just listening to frogs and the occasional rush of a truck on the highway. I remember thinking how easy it would be to disappear, not in some dramatic way. Just slowly, quietly. Let the noise pass and become someone else. But then I felt it again, soft, rhythmic from the inside. The baby, still growing, still choosing me. And I realized something brutal and beautiful all at once. I wasn't the story they were telling. I was something no headline could explain. Something real. So I went home, locked the door, made tea, and waited for the world to calm down or burn, whichever came first. I found out about the press conference the same way everyone else did, through a news alert on my phone. I was sitting on the couch with Gracie flipping channels and trying to pretend the world wasn't chewing me up in syndication when the banner ran across the bottom of the screen. Retired Army Sergeant to address Baton Rouge clinic scandal. Live in 10 minutes. And below that, Isaac Doyle. My heart jumped in a way I hated. I told myself it meant nothing. Maybe he was there to protect himself, distance his name from mine. Maybe he'd throw me under the bus like everyone else already had. But still. I watched. The feed cut to a small, makeshift podium set up outside a Veterans Center. No flags, no fanfare, just a row of folding chairs and a microphone taped to a stand. And then he walked out. No suit, no press handler, just jeans boots, and that quiet authority in his posture that said I didn't come here to explain. I came here to tell you what is. He didn't wait for questions, didn't look nervous, didn't fumble. I'm Isaac Doyle, he began. Former Army Staff Sergeant, retired in 2018. I'm here to confirm that my genetic material was used in a medical procedure at Westport Fertility Clinic without my knowledge or consent. Clicking cameras, pens, scribbling. The woman involved, Charlotte Navarro, did not ask for this, did not engineer it, and has not, contrary to speculation, filed suit-threatened legal action or sought financial gain. She was like me, misled. He paused, not because he needed to, but because he wanted the weight of that to land. I donated years ago, he said, under strict terms. My file was flagged for restricted access. I had reasons, good ones. I served 3 tours overseas. I've lost more than I care to count, and I carry that every day. He gripped the sides of the podium steady. This situation, what's happened, it's not about blame. It's about truth. It's about dignity. And I won't stand by while a woman who's done nothing wrong is turned into a circus act. He looked straight into the camera. Charlotte Navarro deserves privacy. She deserves peace. And whether she wants anything to do with me or not, she has my respect. No questions, no applause, just that. Then he turned and walked back inside. It lasted less than 5 minutes, but it changed everything. I sat there stunned, holding the remote like it was proof the world had flipped upside down. Gracie looked at me wide-eyed. Did he just... Yeah, I whispered. He did. That night, the headlines changed tone. The same people who'd called me delusional were now asking, how could a clinic make such a mistake? Podcasters who mocked me last week were suddenly talking about informed consent and genetic ethics. Some even called me brave. I wasn't. But I was no longer invisible. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a simple folded sheet of paper. You shouldn't have had to speak first. I'm sorry it took me so long. Isaac. There was no phone number, no instructions, just that. And for once, it was enough. Because now when I walked into the pharmacy, no one stared. When I dropped Gracie off at school, no one whispered. I was still carrying the same child, still waking up in the same bed, still wondering how the hell I'd get through the next week. But I wasn't carrying the shame anymore. He took that, and stood with it, so I could keep walking. It wasn't planned. Not really. Gracie was going on a weekend field trip with school, and I didn't feel safe being alone. Someone had posted my address online, and even though the story had cooled down, the messages hadn't. Some of them were just weird. Others felt... close. I texted Isaac without thinking it through. Do you still have that cabin? His reply came 2 minutes later. Still got an extra key. He didn't ask questions. Didn't ask why. So that Friday I packed a duffel bag, fed the neighbor's cat, and drove 2 hours out into the quiet. Past the sagging fences and gas stations that sold more lottery tickets than gas. Into the part of the state where no one watched the news, because they already knew too much about people. His truck was out front when I pulled up. Porch light on. Door unlocked. Inside the cabin still smelled like cedar and black coffee. Same battered leather chair. Same yellow-tinted lamp. But this time, there was a folded blanket on the couch, a mug set out. He was expecting me. Isaac came out of the kitchen holding a second mug, wordlessly offered it. I took it. "Spare room's made up," he said, nodding down the hallway. "Thanks," I said. We didn't hug. We didn't smile. Just passed each other like two people trying not to spook a wild animal. The first night, I barely slept. Not because I was scared, but because it was quiet. Really quiet. No sirens. No neighbors fighting. No fridge humming like it was ready to die. Just wind and trees, and the occasional crack of an old pipe somewhere behind the walls. The next morning he made pancakes, burned the first batch cursed under his breath, then slid the second stack onto my plate, like he'd done it every weekend of his life. "Don't get used to it," he muttered. I smirked. Wouldn't dream of it. We ate in silence, but it wasn't sharp anymore. Just space. After breakfast, I helped him split firewood. He didn't offer. I just grabbed a smaller axe and started copying his rhythm. Chop, breathe. Chop, shift. We didn't say much, but there was something oddly comforting about working beside him. Like we were building something together, even if it was just a woodpile. By the third day, we found a kind of pattern. He rose early, went running in the woods behind the cabin, came back sweaty, quiet, focused. I stayed in, read, stared out the window, let my body rest in a way it hadn't for months. Sometimes we crossed paths in the hallway and bumped shoulders by accident. Sometimes we sat on the porch and drank tea while the sun dropped behind the trees. No declarations, no confessions, just stillness. The kind of stillness you don't realize you've been starving for until it settles over you like a blanket you forgot was yours. That night, I found the pressed flowers. They were inside a thick book on the shelf tucked between pages about survival and field trauma. Faded yellow, fragile as dust. I didn't touch them. Just stared. He saw me looking and said he used to give me those. A boy, back when I still thought war had rules. I didn't say anything, just nodded, closed the book, and slid it back exactly where it was. We didn't talk about grief. We didn't talk about pain. But somehow I think we both knew we were walking through it together now, even in silence. On my fourth morning there, I woke up to find a small wooden crib sitting in the corner of the spare room. Handmade. No paint. Just raw pine and sanded edges. I touched the edge, ran my fingers along the grain. There was a note taped to the railing. Figured he or she should have something real to sleep in. No signature, but I knew whose hands built it. And in that moment I stopped feeling like a guest. I started feeling like maybe I wasn't alone in this anymore. It was a Thursday. I remember because the sky had that strange purple tint that only shows up when the weather can't decide what it wants to be. The kind of evening that presses on your chest, not with sadness, but with weight. Memory. Waiting. We'd eaten dinner without much talk. Soup toast, half a peach each. Simple. Safe. Gracie had called earlier. She didn't say much, just that some girls at school were whispering again, saying I was famous for the wrong reasons. She tried to laugh it off. I didn't. I sat on the porch for a while afterward. The wood beneath me was cold. The trees were nothing but outlines. Isaac came out quietly and sat beside me. No coat, no hesitation. He held a mug in both hands, but I don't think he was drinking it. Just using the heat to stay grounded. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. I said softly. He didn't ask what I meant. I keep thinking someone's gonna come knock on that door with a folder full of new reasons I don't deserve this life. I continued, or worse, that I'm stealing it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That's what shame does. It teaches you to pre-pack your own punishment." I looked at him. "You speak like someone who knows." I used to think he said that if I just disappeared long enough, I could erase the pieces of me that didn't deserve peace. And I asked. I was wrong. The wind moved. Dry leaves scraped across the porch like they wanted in on the conversation. "I'm scared," I said, and the words felt like stone leaving my mouth. He didn't flinch, just nodded. "So am I. I don't know how to build a family," I added. "Neither do I." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't need filling. Then I turned to him and asked the question that had been rotting at the base of my spine for days. "Why are you really still here, Isaac?" He didn't answer right away, took a breath, watched his own hands like they might speak first, then finally, "Because when I look at you, I don't feel like a mistake." I didn't know what to say to that. My throat burned. My fingers trembled against the side of my cup. He went on, his voice. "Even I've done things I'll never say out loud. I've left people, watched others leave, and I figured this part of my life was just going to be silence." He turned to me then. "But you walked up to my door and handed me the truth. You didn't scream. You didn't demand. You just gave it, and you trusted I wouldn't throw it away." I looked at him, really looked. Under all the stillness, the man was breaking and rebuilding at the same time. "I'm not here because I have to be," he said. "I'm here because I want to be." 6 words, and somehow they carried more weight than any "I love you" I'd ever imagined. I didn't cry. I didn't fall into his arms. I just breathed like I hadn't let myself for weeks. And he stayed sitting there. Didn't reach for me. Didn't run either, just stayed. And in that moment, I knew something I hadn't known until then, even when everything outside was still broken. This right here was starting to heal. It started with back pain. Not the dull ache I'd been feeling for weeks, but something sharper, deeper, like my body knew before my brain did. I was 39 weeks, give or take. No complications. Baby was head down, heartbeat steady. But something was shifting. Isaac was calm. Calm in that ex-military way. Efficient, focused, no wasted motion. He loaded the car like we were going on a mission, not to the hospital. I think he needed it to feel like logistics, not fear. "Breathe," he said. "You're okay." I believed him. Until we reached the hospital. They were waiting for us. Not in the warm, helpful way hospitals usually wait. More like watching, assessing. Someone must have tipped them off, maybe a nurse, maybe a receptionist. The scandal had cooled in the press, but online it never really died. We got as far as triage before a nurse asked for my full name. I gave it. Her face changed. "I'll need to check with Dr. Lenhart," she said. Minutes passed. Then someone else came. Not Lenhart. A woman in scrubs with a clipboard and a tight mouth. "Ms. Navarro. I'm sorry," she said, "but due to unresolved legal complications connected to your medical history, we're unable to proceed with your delivery here." My contractions were 6 minutes apart. I blinked. "What are you talking about? This is a routine birth." She shook her head almost sympathetically. "There are liability concerns." Isaac stepped forward. "Are you refusing medical care to a woman in active labor?" "We're not refusing," she replied. Rehearsed. "We're advising you to transfer to another facility more equipped to handle unique cases like this." Unique. Like I was a circus act. A legal gray area with a heartbeat. We pre-registered months ago, I said. You already took my insurance info, my charts, my plan. I'm truly sorry. But she wasn't. Not really. She was scared. Of headlines. Of lawyers. Of being the next link in a long chain of mistakes. Isaac's voice dropped an octave. Where's the nearest hospital that'll take her St. Monica's? 17 miles east. Smaller. But... She trailed off. The look in her eyes said what her mouth wouldn't. They don't know who you are over there. Not yet. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, turned on aching legs, and walked back out with Isaac's hand hovering protectively at my back. Not touching. Just there. Like a shadow willing to fight. The drive was quiet. I stared out the window as the world blurred past. Strip malls. Empty roads. Fields of sugarcane waving in the dusk. Isaac glanced at me. You holding up, I'm trying, I whispered. He didn't press. When we reached St. Monica's, there were no cameras, no judgment, just a sleepy receptionist with kind eyes, and a nurse who asked me if I'd like a warm blanket while we waited. They didn't ask questions about headlines. They just looked at me like I was a woman having a baby. Imagine that. They gave us a room, hooked me up. The nurse's name was Margot. She talked about her 2 kids and how they both came on rainy Thursdays. She asked if I had a name picked out. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready for that part yet. Outside the room, I saw Isaac pacing, not with worry, but with restraint. Like he wanted to fix everything but finally understood that this wasn't his war to win. This was mine. Still. He was here. And no doctor, no article, no public opinion could take that from me. I was going to meet my child. And no one, no hospital, no scandal, no courtroom could stop that now. The baby came fast. Too fast, the nurses said. I barely had time to scream before the world cracked open, and something whole and new slid into it, slippery and real, and louder than I expected. A girl. 10 fingers. Full lungs. Soft hair pressed flat against a wrinkled forehead. They wrapped her and placed her on my chest, and for a second I forgot how heavy the world had been. She didn't care about headlines or lawsuits. She just breathed, like she'd already made peace with me. I held her like I'd done it before in another life. Isaac stood to the side. He didn't rush forward, didn't crowd me. He watched, still, quiet. That quiet of his had become something sacred by then, something I could lean on without touching. Then the door creaked open, and I saw her. Nurse Callahan, hair a little grayer, gait a little slower, but still her, still with that same tired kindness in her eyes. I blinked, not sure if I was hallucinating from blood loss or shock. She smiled. Didn't think I'd miss this, did you? I tried to sit up, failed. How word gets around, she said. A friend from St. Monica's called me. Figured you'd be needing someone who doesn't run when things get messy. I wanted to cry. Not because I was sad, but because she came back. In a world full of people who shut their doors, she had opened one. Again. She walked over, checked the chart, the baby, then me. You did good, sweetheart, she said, and I believed her. After they cleaned up, after the wires were unhooked and the world was a little quieter, Isaac stepped forward. I watched him watching her. Not me. Not Callahan. Her. The child. And I asked him the one thing I hadn't dared ask before. Who are you? To her. He didn't flinch. He didn't dodge. He just pulled a chair beside the bed, sat down, and looked me square in the eye. I'm not her father by accident, he said, but I'll stay in her life on purpose. Simple. not poetic, but it undid something in me. Nurse Callahan slipped out, gave us space. The baby shifted in my arms, a tiny fist uncurling like she trusted the world already. Foolish, brave, beautiful. You don't owe me anything, I whispered. Isaac shook his head. That's the thing. I want to. He reached over not for me, but for her. One finger. She gripped it like she knew his touch already. She'll have your eyes, I said. And your fight, he said back. We didn't define it more than that. No titles, no pressure, just a promise made in a hospital room lit by silence and the low hum of machines. And in that quiet, I finally let myself breathe. Not because everything was fixed, but because this was real and enough. We didn't go back to the city. The trailer stayed empty. The mailbox rusted shut. The news cycle moved on hungry for the next scandal, the next woman to dissect and discard. But we stayed. The cabin became something else, not just a safe place, but a real one. We fixed the draft in the back window, painted the crib white, started leaving our mugs on the same shelf instead of putting them away. Some nights, Gracie came up for the weekend. She loved the woods, said the silence here didn't feel empty like it used to, said it felt like we meant to be here. I believed her. Isaac never used words he didn't have to, but his actions were fluent. He boiled bottles without being asked. He changed diapers with the kind of precision I guessed came from field triage. He built a rocking chair out of scrap wood and swore it was crooked, but I never told him it rocked just fine. We didn't label what we were. Not yet. But every time he held the baby, like she was something fragile and important, every time he brushed Gracie's hair back and asked how school was, every time he sat next to me without fixing, without solving, just being there, I understood. We were building something, not out of obligation, but out of choice. The baby, her name's Elena, slept mostly through the night now. She liked the ticking of the old wall clock, liked the sound of Isaac humming under his breath when he thought no one was listening. Some nights I'd wake up to check on her and find him already there, sitting beside her, crib eyes soft. Not afraid. Just aware. Present. One morning I found a small note tucked inside the baby book I kept on the shelf. It was written in Isaac's handwriting. Blocky. Almost reluctant. She doesn't have to know where she came from. Just that she's safe. That she's loved. That someone stood up for her before she could stand on her own. I read it twice, then put it back where I found it. We never talked about it. But I kept the note, just in case she ever asked. Just in case she ever needed proof. Spring came. Slowly, carefully, like it too was learning to begin again. We planted herbs out back in old coffee cans. Gracie painted little signs for each one. Elena started smiling more, grabbing our fingers, looking at the world, like it was some huge, kind thing waiting to meet her. And maybe for her, it will be. One night, sitting out on the porch with a baby monitor humming beside me, I looked at Isaac and said, "You think we'll ever be normal?" He didn't smile, didn't scoff. He just said, "Who needs that?" And I realized he was right. We weren't chasing normal. We were building peace. Messy, quiet, earned. It was quiet that morning. The kind of quiet where even the birds don't bother breaking it, like the world agreed to let you wake up slow with no expectations. I was standing by the kitchen window, Elena in one arm, her head tucked under my chin. The sun had just come up over the pines. Isaac was outside, sleeves rolled up, fiddling with the soil near the fence line. I didn't ask what he was doing. He always found peace with his hands in the dirt. A few minutes later, he came in, dust on his boots, something behind his back. "What's that?" I asked. He shrugged like it wasn't much, but his eyes said otherwise. He handed me a small wooden box, about the size of a book, light with a sliding lid and a faint scent of cedar. There was a strip of paper wrapped around it, handwritten in block letters, Carnegie Leucantha. I raised an eyebrow. He half smiled. White cactus. Desert bloom. Grows where almost nothing else can. I slid the lid open. Inside were maybe a dozen small seeds. Pale. Unremarkable. The kind of thing you could throw away without a second thought if you didn't know what it held. They only bloom once every few years, he said. But when they do, it's wild. They don't ask for much. Just time and space and a little stubbornness. I stared at the seeds. They didn't look like hope, but somehow they felt like it. Why this? I asked softly. Because you remind me of them. I looked up. He wasn't trying to charm me. He was just telling the truth the only way he knew how. He stepped closer, brushing a thumb lightly over Elena's tiny hand. You made something grow where no one thought it could, he said. You lived through dry seasons. Most people wouldn't survive. And you didn't just survive, Charlotte, you created. I swallowed hard. This isn't a gift, he added. It's a mirror. I held the box tighter, like it might disappear if I blinked. We didn't kiss. We didn't embrace. But something passed between us in that moment. Quieter than love, maybe deeper. A recognition. A choosing. Later that day I planted 3 of the seeds in a cracked coffee mug by the window. No ceremony, no music playing, just dirt, sun, and patience. Gracie came by after school and asked what they were. I told her they're cactus flowers, the kind that grow in places people forget to look. She nodded. Sounds like us. I smiled. Isaac didn't say much the rest of the evening. He helped make dinner, tucked Elena into her cradle, then sat on the porch, watching the stars rise like old promises. Before I went to bed, I joined him. You think they'll grow? I asked, nodding toward the seeds. He took a slow breath. They already are. And somehow, I knew he didn't just mean the plants.